All right. Welcome to this recording. In this recording, I will begin by recapitulating the three. Sorry. Sorry for that. Okay. Okay. I will begin with a recapitulation of the three different responses to skepticism. So this was given to you as an activity, and I have graded your papers on this, but I just want us to go back to this because it's important for understanding Williams's solution to skepticism or Williams's response to skepticism. So let's begin with Descartes. Kind of very quickly because I know that we've discussed this before. You already have videos where it is explained to you, and for most of you, I know that you have read the text. Okay. So, ang pinakauna kay Descartes ay meron siyang isang pangunahing problema. Yung problema niya, nalaman niya na lahat pala halos ng mga bagay na natutunan niya at inaakalang niyang alam niya ay mali pala. Okay? Tapos gusto niya maging systematic sa pagwawasto ng mga kamalian na yun, kaya nag-imbento siya ng metodo batay sa pagdududa. So as a universal methodic doubt, he applied it to everything. And his basic standard is that anything that can be doubted should be thrown out the window. So if there's even a small reason, uh, an outside possibility that something can be doubted, then we cannot trust that, right? So he tried to get rid of everything. He tried to deploy that method. And then he arrived at something which cannot be doubted, and that it is the fact that he is existing, he is doubting, and the piece of certitude that he discovered is that I exist, even if there is an evil genius out there deceiving me. So the activity of doubting affirms the existence of the doubter, right? So, and he exists as a thinking thing. So he has all these ideas and everything, right? So that's his solution to skepticism, in that he's able to push back against skepticism by discovering something that he cannot be skeptical about. However, Descartes' solution to skepticism, the discovery that his existence is indubitable, gave birth to another problem, which is that he is trapped in his own mind. He's not sure if he has a body. He's not sure if there's an external world. He's not sure of anything because there can be an evil genius um, out there deceiving him about everything. All that he can be sure of is that one, he exists, two, he's a thinking thing. So, ang nangyari dito, si Descartes ay nagkaroon ng hiwalay na pangalawang problema na minsan tinatawag ng mga ibang manunulat na problem of the bridge. Kasi kailangan niya makalabas dun sa kanyang isip, na parang nakukulong siya sa loob ng kanyang kalooban, at ang nasisiguro niya lang na nandun siya, tapos na nag-iisip siya. So the problem of the bridge is solved by Descartes by using the concept of God. So essentially, as I've told you before, this is a problematic solution because he uses God as a magical solution, especially as a bridge to the external world, as a kind of guarantor that he is connected to a world outside his own mind. So, ang matututunan natin dito sa Cartesian solution ay yung solution niya ay may problema kasi nanganak ng isa pang problema. Tapos yung isang problema na yun, actually, yung problem of the bridge, hindi ka magkakaroon ng problema na ganun kung hindi mo tinatanggap yung first step nung Cartesian solution to skepticism. Kaya mga tao, naisip nila, okay, mahalaga yung ginagawa ni Descartes, mahalaga yung mga tanong niya, pero hindi matino yung solution niya to skepticism. Kasi yung solution niya to skepticism creates another problem, and then it's solved by him in an even more dubious way. So we have Russell, and we have more. I'm not going to repeat all the things that are in the video, the Jennifer Nagel video that you listened to already. But the chief difference between Russell and Moore is that Russell is willing to entertain the possibility that the skeptical hypothesis is true. So, ang sinasabi ni si Russell kasi, ayaw niyang maging dogmatic tungkol doon sa kanyang mga intuitive beliefs, tungkol doon sa kanyang mga inference to the best explanation. Right? Moore is more inclined to really brush off the skeptic, and he's certain that he has two hands, and that he is certain that common sense trumps skeptical hypothesis like the evil genius, brain in a vat, etc. Okay? So, si Russell, yung paliwanag ni Russell kasi, yung solution is Russell, medyo malapit, medyo may kaunting pagkakahawik doon sa solution ni Williams, kaya kailangan natin itong balikan. Yung tinatawag ni Russell na inference to the best explanation, ito ay ginagamit natin sa pang-araw-araw na buhay at ginagamit natin sa scientific sa paggamit ng scientific method. Okay? So, scientific investigation. When we see something in the world, we form intuitive ideas about how things came to be. So one example that I often give is if you go back to the place where you live right now, so baka bahay mo yun, baka dorm yun, kung saan ka man nakatira, tapos pag tingin mo sa lamesa, nakita ka na maduming pinggan na may mga buto ng manok. Maisip mo, may kumain. So, kung sino man kasama sa bahay, yung roommate mo, yung kapatid mo, yung nanay mo, kumain sila, ang ulam nila manok. Ganon. So, that's an intuitive belief. And it's also a simpler explanation of what we find because we weren't really there when whoever it is who was eating was actually eating. So, ang nakita lang natin yung parang aftermath nung nangyari na yon. Hindi mo sasabihin na, pwede na, kaya may mga buto ng manok dito. Kasi yung kasamahan ko sa bahay, pinadumi niya talaga yung pinggan na yan na peke, pero hindi naman siya dyan kumain. Tapos kumuha lang siya ng mga buto ng manok, baka dun sa katabi na tindahan o kung saan man, tapos ilagay niya yan para isipin ko na kumain siya na at ang ulam niya ay manok. That's it is possible, but that is not likely. And we do not favor that explanation because it is too complicated. There are too many conjectures involved. And the first explanation na may kumain, na pag-iwanan to, etc., mas simple yon. So yung inference to the best explanation, it refers to our preference for simpler or even the simplest explanation that we can land on. And this is why we have philosophical principles like Occam's razor. So yung medyo sikat na application ng Occam's razor, if you hear hooves, you assume it's a horse, not a zebra. So the idea is horses are more common than zebras. Dito sa Pilipinas, wala namang zebra, except lang sa Palawan na, anyway, that's a separate story. Pero kung may narinig ka na parang hooves, hindi ko alam kung anong pagsasalin sa Tagalog ng hooves, na naglalakad sa bato, sa simento, sa kalsada, maisip mo, may kabayo. Kasi, that's a simpler, that's the inference to the best explanation of what you are hearing. So halimbawa, kung merong isang doktor ng tao, doktor ng hayop, yung pasyente niya, kahit na malit na bata yun, o tuta, mainit, kinuha niya gumamit siya ng thermometer, mataas sa elevated temperature, ang simplest explanation, may lagnat ito, may sakit ito. Hindi sasabihin nung vet o nung pediatrician na, siguro may isang pambihirang dahilan kung bakit umiinit ang katawan nitong pasyente ko pero wala itong kinalaman sa sakit o lagnat o kahit na ano pa. That explanation is not simple. It involves too many conjectures and we don't intuitively come to that explanation. So yun yung sinasabi ni Russell. Tapos, pwede bang mali yun? Oo, pwede. I think what's interesting about Russell's solution to skepticism is that he does not aim to completely defeat it. He is saying that we can have a certain level of confidence that our experience is real, that we are connected to the external world, that our scientific theories are reliable enough, etc., without completely shutting down the skeptic, that we can entertain a certain level of doubt. So yung Moorian solution, hindi ganon. Kasi yung Moorian solution talagang brush off of skepticism. Ano ba yan? That's ridiculous. So that's what Moore tends to say. So those are the main solutions that you've seen before we go to the Williams text. Okay? So mahalaga na balikan yan kasi actually, yung Russellian solution, kahit may mga tanong doon at baka may pagkukulang, meron siyang consistency or compatibility with the idea in the Michael Williams text. And I will refer to that some more later. Okay? So, balik tayo dito sa traditional analysis of knowledge. The reading, okay. Okay. The reading for the reading for this week is chapter 2, or next week rather, is chapter 2 of Feldman's book. Okay? Tapos alam ko, nakita nyo na tong traditional analysis of knowledge. This semester, medyo ibinitin ko yung pagbabasa ng chapter 2 um, ng Feldman textbook. Kasi, una, mahalaga na mapagtuunan natin ng pansin itong belief at ginawa na natin yan. Um, nung mga unang linggo na malinaw sa inyo kung ano ibig sabihin ng belief. Tapos ito, binigyan ko kayo ng definition ng truth, correspondence, theory of truth, Aristotle's definition. Truth is saying what is, that it is. So kaya nga ang mga halimbawa natin ng pieces of knowledge ay na hindi umuulan ngayon, na mainit ngayon, na may kuryente ngayon, nagising ako, hindi na naginip, etc. Because we're talking about propositional knowledge or knowledge that is representational and corresponds to reality. So ngayon, ang pagtutuunan ng pansin natin ay itong yung last step, which is the nature of justification. Before we do that, I would like to point out that here, S knows that P is defined as 1. S believes that P. And here, the variable capital letter S refers to the subject, or we can refer to her as the knower, or we can refer to that person as, we can refer to them as the epistemic agent. So this is the epistemic agent, the agent who makes decisions about what propositions to assent to in their minds. And here, P is a specific proposition, a specific declarative sentence, a specific claim about what's going on in the world. Okay? So, ngayon, pagtutuan na natin ng pansin itong justification. Kasi, mahalaga na malaman nyo na ang Agrippa's trilemma ay tungkol sa epistemic justification. Okay? So, Agrippa's trilemma is about epistemic justification. Let's look at that. Okay, so here's the trilemma again. Okay, so the nice thing or the nicer thing about Agrippa's trilemma is that you don't have to rely on any kind of fantastic conjecture like an evil genius or a brain in a vat or whatever. You can just come up with a belief about anything. Right? So the belief can be the heat index forecast for today or tomorrow is a certain temperature. Right? Usually, I think the rule of thumb now is that when the heat index forecast is 40 degrees Celsius or more, there will be class cancellations. So parang ganun yung naging trend. Nakita natin yan magsimula nung 2024. Right? So when you're asked to back up that belief, for example, you have a belief that it is likely that there will be face-to-face class cancellation when the heat index forecast is greater than 40 degrees Celsius. And then someone you're talking to who is a skeptic can ask, but how do you know? Diba? Yun yung tanong palagi na, paano mo nalaman na totoo nga yan? Talaga ba? Parang ganon. So, Agrippa's trilemma gives us, it's a trilemma because there are three options. So three, lemma, because all the horns, all the three things there are bad options. So you have a dilemma when you are left with only two bad options. You have a trilemma when you are left with only three bad options. So in defending your claim, face-to-face class cancellation is likely when the heat index forecast is 40 degrees Celsius or more. Tapos sinabi sa'yo ng kausap mo, talaga ba? Paano mo nalaman? Totoo ba yan? And then you could cite past incidences. Ito yung nangyari ng isang taon, ito yung nangyari ngayon, ito yung nararamdaman natin pag 40 degrees Celsius ang heat index. Ganito yung pakiramdam pag naglalakad ka sa kalye ng tanghali, etc., etc. Okay, ganito yung pwedeng mangyari pag na-heat stroke ka, etc., etc. Tapos, ang ugali kasi ng skeptic, palaging tatanungin, kahit anong sinabi mo, talaga ba? Ganyan ba talaga na nangyayari yung um, heat stroke? Ganun ba talaga yung nangyari last year? Baka iba yung nangyari. Baka mali pagkaalala mo. Baka may ibang conspiracy na para ibahin yung takbo ng school year. Kaya ibang buwan papasok yung mga bata sa eskwelahan. So, if the skeptic pushes and pushes, you make a claim, they raise a skeptical point, you offer a reason, you offer evidence, and then they can keep asking, but how do you know? How do you know? Is that really true? At that point, you have three options. The first is, at some point, refuse to answer. Sabihin mo, basta, it stops here. Ito na yun. Ito na lahat ng ebidensya. Tama yan. Yun na yun. So that's the first option. And here, this will be taking option one comes with a certain theoretical point, namely that the structure of epistemic justification is like the foundation of a building. So yung option one, yun ay katumbas ng foundationalism about epistemic justification. The second option, okay, yung isa, hindi ka naman titigil na sasabihin mo, okay, ito, dun sa number one kasi sasabihin mo, parang linear yung definition, yung justification rather, tapos merong punto na humihinto na siya doon. Tapos na, yun yung pinakamalalim na makukuha natin, natatapos yung justification doon. Okay? So, ang metaphor dyan ay parang foundation ng building. Napakita ko na sa inyo yung picture niyan. Babalikan pa natin maya-mayang konti. Dito naman sa pangalawa, at some point, repeat something I have already said. So here, justification does not stop, but it loops back. So may bibigay ka na ebidensya, sabihin natin piece of evidence number one with reason A, tapos evidence B with reason B. Pagka binigay mo yon, tapos pagka tinanong ka pa ulit, pwede kang umulit. Yung mga nasabi mo na dati, pwede mo nang ulitin. Ang alegasyon naman dito, yung pangalawang option ay circular. Ay, ang tanong dyan ay, are all forms of circular reasoning bad? That's an interesting philosophical question, actually. Anyway, if you take option two, at some point, repeat something you've already said, and you say, okay lang yun, that comes with, again, a certain theoretical position, and that theoretical position is coherentism about epistemic justification. The belief that the justification for our claims is structured like a network na interlocking beliefs. Okay? So, ang dahilan kung bakit pumipili tayo dito sa 1, 2, 3, kasi ayaw nating makarating ang skeptic dito sa conclusion, which is none of our claims are justified at all. So, ayaw natin marating yon. Yung pangatlo naman, infinitism, you keep trying to think of something new to say. For the most part, we are inclined to say the third option is bad because we are finite beings. Our capacity to know is also finite. So, how can we uh, think of something to say ad infinitum? na hindi matatapos. Eh tayo nga may katapusan tayo dahil tao tayo. So parang hindi feasible yung number three. Okay? So ito na naman tayo. Yung central image for epistemological foundationalism is an architectural edifice. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, pagka iisipin mo kung ano yung itsura o ano yung structure ng ating mga dahilan para sa mga nalalaman natin, ang imahen na mabubuo natin ay parang mga haligi ng bahay o parang haligi ng tulay. Ibig sabihin, may mga bahagi doon na mas mahalaga. Kasi halimbawa dito sa drawing na to, mas mahalaga itong foundation, yung mga haligi na yan, tsaka yung mga biga, kung bahay. Yun yung parang skeleton ng buong structure. So may mga bahagi doon, ba, yung mga bintana na nasusuportahan yon nung mas matitibay na pundasyon nung kung ano man yung architectural edifice na yun, kung tulay man yun o bahay. So ang ibig sabihin nito, epistemologically speaking, there are certain beliefs that are more important than others. There are certain beliefs that are more basic and that they are responsible for supporting the rest of the other things that we believe, the rest of the other things that we can claim that we know. Okay? So yan yung idea of foundationalism. Foundationalism is a claim about the structure of epistemic justification. And ang sinasabi dito na merong mga belief, yung basic beliefs nga, na yung basic beliefs, yun ang, that is what hooks us into reality. Kasi yung foundations ng architectural edifice, ganun din yan eh, naghuhukay para yung kung ano man yun, nakakabit sa lupa, para naka ano siya doon, naka-anchor siya doon. Hindi siya gumagalaw, matibay siya, pwede mo siyang patungan, pwede mo siyang palakihin, etc. Okay? As opposed to this, there is coherentism. Okay, so I have here a definition of coherentism that comes from the epistemologist Ernest Sosa. And coherentism completely changes the picture of epistemic justification. So according to the coherentist, our knowledge is a set of interlocking items that allow us to float effectively in the sea of reality that we cannot fully tame or control. Actually, marami mga philosophers of science na ang paniniwala nila na ang agham ay parang ganito. So the central image is that of a raft, and some philosophers of science claim that the nice thing about science is that it allows us to float along, it allows us to get to places even with an imperfect vehicle. At saka kahit na habang nasa lao tayo, pwede tayong mag-repair. Halimbawa, natuklasan natin yung isang bahagi, hindi pala yun matino, mali pala yung bahagi ng scientific theory na yun, kaya natin palitan. At habang pinapalitan natin, lumulutang pa rin tayo. And it's a work in progress as you continue to move along in better understanding the world and navigating the reality in which we live. Okay? So coherentism and foundationalism are like a seesaw for most epistemologists. At least that's how Ernest Sosa describes it. Kasi ang nangyari dito, yung sa Agrippa's dilemma, pwede mong makita yung last few decades or even century of epistemologists going back and forth. Minsan may mga magagaling na foundationalist. Tapos sa dekada na yon, mas nakakalamang yung foundationalist kasi meron silang mga theoretical innovation. Di ba? Tapos kabila naman, next decade, merong magaling na coherentist. Tapos meron siyang theoretical innovation na sasabihin, okay, parang mas matino pala yung coherentism, ano? Tapos, the next decade again. So it's like it's a never-ending seesaw. And Ernest Sosa, I think, rightly points out that we must step out of this. But of course, if we step out of that, where do we go? How do we picture? How do we understand epistemic justification? That is a question that we will answer later after the midterms. For now, I want to I have asked some students to do this already, but this is something that I will ask you to continue to deal with because this is a list of topics in the most important sections or the most important pages of Michael Williams's text. So, mahalaga na mapili nyo kung alin dito yung hindi nyo masyadong naiintindihan, tapos tukuyin kung ano doon yung nakakalito, o kaya mag-formulate ng tanong. Ano ba yung hindi nyo naiintindihan doon? Para, ah, para umusad yung pag-unawa nyo dito sa topic at bilang paghahanda na rin para sa ating darating na midterm exam. So here are the topics. One is the difficulties with foundationalism. The second is difficulties with coherentism. And third is the diagnostic approach to skepticism. The prior grounding requirement, default and challenge, epistemic entitlement. In this recording, I will most probably explain until number 3. But and probably even start on number 4. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, so this is the part of the text where Williams talks about difficulties with foundationalism. Ito ay nasa page 42. Okay, let me just quickly go to that page. So if we go to page 42, you go to the top of the page, the new paragraph that begins on that page. Nevertheless, although the foundationalism is not obviously hopeless, it is difficult to develop foundational ideas in a fully convincing way. So ang problema ng mga foundationalists ganito. Maaari natin tong makita sa nangyari kay Descartes. Pag nakahanap ka ng basic belief, yung belief na talagang matibay, yung belief na talagang hindi pwedeng pagdudahan, kagaya ng cogito ergo sum. Malinaw na malinaw yon, pero napaka-kitid, napaka-liit. Kaya ano yung problema ni Descartes? Hindi siya foundationalist kasi si Descartes, ano? So, hindi siya makapagtayo ng isang komplikadong body of knowledge based on just one thin foundation. It's almost like an attempt to build all of science, all of mathematics, and all of common sense knowledge by just relying on the foundation of one toothpick. Kasi parang ganun yung cogito ergo sum. Wala nang iba. So, ang problema ng foundationalist ganito. If they posit a basic belief that is narrow, it is easier to show that that belief is really basic and really not questionable. But it is harder to build on something small and narrow. Okay? But if they go and say, okay, let's select something broad. So, gusto natin yung mga haligi natin, parang mas malawak yung saklaw, mas marami tayong pwedeng ipatong, kumbaga. If you do that, if you have a belief that's broader in scope, it's more difficult to establish that belief as something basic, right? So it's like you choose between two very difficult things. One is to build a very elaborate and extensive structure on a narrow foundation, which will not have structural integrity at all, or hirap na hirap kang makapagtayo ng foundation. Kasi nga, mahirap mag-defend as basic belief yung mga belief na malawak ang saklaw. Okay? So, yun yung problema ng foundationalist. At ito rin yung theoretical task. So, ang foundationalist ka, pipili ka doon sa dalawang problema na yun. And I think most foundationalists choose the second option, which is to defend. Descartes is rare in that he chooses a narrow foundation na cogito, and parang ang pinakapal niya, ang pinalaki niyang foundation, yung konsepto ng Diyos, pero alam natin na maraming ibang problema doon. Okay? So this is what's happening in foundationalism, and if we have foundationalist, the famous epistemologist Chisholm, he chooses the foundation of appearances. So parang empirical foundation yan. What appears true to us Okay, siyempre, subject to verification, subject to checking, subject to further investigation, pero ang basic belief ay appearances. Okay, and this is kind of related to our senses. There's another famous epistemologist who says something a bit similar but adds something more substantial. Si Alvin Plantinga, who is also foundationalist, he thinks that the basic beliefs are the deliverances of our faculties. So yung faculties, kasama din yung five senses, pero kasama din yung faculty of reasoning, ganon, abstract reasoning, ganyan. So deliverances of our faculties, yung mga maaari nating makita, malaman sa pamamagitan ng kakayahan nating umalam, so five senses, reasoning capacities, and things that we learn in an environment of trust. And so here we discover something interesting, which is that knowledge has a social element. And again, this is one of the mistakes that Descartes made because Descartes assumed without thinking that people try to attain knowledge in isolation, but that's not really true. Even if you look at Descartes, even at the point where he was talking about the evil genius or conjecturing that he might be dreaming, he was thinking with language. He was thinking in Latin, he was thinking in French. Those are the two languages that he wrote in. And those languages were not invented by him, right? And we see here that knowers do not, or epistemic agents, do not move towards knowledge and understanding in isolation. So yun yung sinasabi ni Plantinga na environment of trust. So yun na yun para may social element na yung epistemology. Okay? Tapos kung babalik tayo dun sa halimbawa ng si Stella, yung mga estudyante ni Stella, wala silang environment of trust. Kasi yung teacher nila, tinuturuan pala sila ng isang bagay na sa palagay niya ay hindi tama yun. Because Stella is a creationist. Anyway, so yun yung, so Stella students have the opposite of an environment of trust, which is something that Plantinga believes is necessary for establishing basic beliefs or a foundation of knowledge. Okay, so these are the difficulties with foundationalism. What about the difficulties with coherentism? So I have here a picture of the Ptolemaic model of the solar system. Actually, they called it the Ptolemaic model of the universe because they did not conceive of anything beyond what we call today as our solar system. So, ang punto kasi dito, maraming theory. Lahat ng theory halos meron internal coherence. Okay? So even the Ptolemaic model is coherent. There are epicycles. So kasi gusto nilang panghawakan yung paniniwala na circular yung orbit ng mga planeta kasi nga heavens is the domain of God, so it must be perfect. Therefore, it must be circular because the circle is perfect. The planets are perfectly spherical, the orbits are perfectly circular, etc., etc. Pero pagka meron silang systematic observation, hindi match. Kasi alam natin ngayon na ang orbit ng mga planeta ay elliptical. So may dalawang foci. Ibig sabihin, di nila maipaliwanag kasi sinasabi nila, kasi siguro may epicycle. Yung mga planeta, umikot sila ng pabilog, tapos minsan biglang naisipan nilang parang sumayaw ng isa pang small circle within that circular orbit. So, yun yung epicycle. So, the idea is that, una, we have to choose between coherent things, coherent systems, or coherent theories, and that seems to require us to grasp our whole system of beliefs. Pero parang hindi natin yun ginagawa consciously or unconsciously kasi parang hindi natin yun kaya. Kahit na sino sa atin, kahit na well-informed tayo, kasi tayo sa klase, wala naman sa ating astrophysicist, wala naman sa ating astronomer. Pero halimbawa, well-informed ka, nag-interest mo yan nung bata ka, alam mo or natutunan mo nung lumalaki ka, Pero hindi mo pinanghahawakan lahat yung kabit-kabit na paniniwala na yun sa isip mo. That seems to be something very cognitively burdensome. And for the most part, we cannot and we do not do that. So insofar as coherentism appears to require that, coherentism has a problem. Okay. So, um, babalikan natin yung Agrippa's trilemma. Kasi nakita natin, ito, one option is to explain that number one is actually an acceptable option, that it's not actually dogmatic, because we can defend why certain beliefs deserve a special status because they are basic, they are privileged, etc., and they can serve as a foundation of the rest of the things that we claim to know. Okay? So yun yung sinasabi. Pero nakita natin may mga problema ito, theoretical problems here that are very difficult to solve. And then sa coherentism, ganun din, ano? So, ang nangyari dito, may problema sa number one, may problema sa number two, may problema sa number three, pero ayaw pa rin natin tanggapin yung conclusion. Kasi ayaw natin tanggapin itong none of our claims are ever justified. We want to believe that some of our claims are justified, maybe not perfectly, but with a certain degree of confidence, we can say has a higher justification, and we can proceed on that piece of belief or that we claim to be knowledge. Okay? So, ang approach ni Williams ay sabihin na hindi posible ang straight solution. Kasi ang straight solution, ang tawag doon ay, nakita ka ng argument na ganito, very formalized, structured like a standard trilemma. There are three lemmas or three horns, and all of them are bad. And a straight solution would consist in choosing one of the three options and showing that that option is actually reasonable. So the conclusion of the supposed trilemma is not established, and actually hindi siya trilemma kasi ibig sabihin may isang option doon na okay naman, di ba? So yun ang straight solution. Pipili ka dyan. So, 1, 2, 3. Ang diagnostic solution ay pagsasabi na walang straight solution na posible. Nakarating tayo dito, naghahanap tayo ng straight solution kasi may pagkalitong o may pagkakamaling nangyari along the way, and the way out of this problem is to identify that piece of confusion or that piece of mistaken reasoning so that the whole problem disappears. So ito na yung Wittgensteinian element ng pananaw ni Michael Williams, because this is a very, very Wittgensteinian approach to philosophical problems. So Wittgenstein is famous for having said that philosophical problems arise out of a confusion, and the way out of them is to show that there's a problem with a question in the first place. And once people realize that problem, poof, the question disappears and the confusion is diffused. So parang ganun yung tinatawag din yun minsan na therapeutic approach to philosophy. Nagkaroon tayo ng pagkakapilipilipit sa pag-iisip, nalito tayo kung ano na nangyari, kaya nga lumalabas yung mga tanong na gano'n. So ang diagnostic approach ay tutukuyin natin kung ano yung nangyari doon sa bakit nagkapilipilipit, ano yung napilipit sa alin, paano natin yun itutuwid para mawala yung tanong, para mawala yung problema. Okay? So yun yung diagnostic approach. And Michael Williams' specific diagnosis is that we have granted the skeptic an unrestricted unrestricted and unjustified permission to ask. But how do you know? Pero ang sinasabi kasi ni Williams dito, halimbawa, isang person A, so si person A yung tao may paniniwalaan siya, halimbawa naniniwala siya na, let's go back to my previous example, the belief is that if the heat index forecast the following day is 40 degrees Celsius or higher, most probably face-to-face classes will be suspended. So that's a belief, right? And then the skeptic asks, but how do you know? Right? So skeptic is person B, and then person A will cite the immediately preceding year. Eh kasi noong 2024, ganun yung nangyari. Tapos, sasabihin na naman ni skeptic, eh paano mo nalaman na mangyayari yun ulit? That was repeated what happened this year is going to happen again this year. Um, in ordinary life, we actually demand that people explain their further doubts or at least lay out where that further doubt is coming from. In practical terms, and this happens both in common sense, ordinary day-to-day living, and scientific investigation, when somebody is doubting or asking question or being skeptical about a certain claim, and then you take that in good faith and you give a response, and they raise a further doubt, then they're also required to justify why they are still doubting. Halimbawa, nagsabi sa'yo, ganun talaga nangyari nung isang taon? Talaga ba? Baka nahihibang ka lang. Baka hindi yun talaga yung totoong nangyari nung 2024. Pagka may nagsabi sa'yo nun sa'yo, sasabihin mo, bakit mo naman nasabing pwedeng nahihibang ako? Nangyari na ba yun sa akin? Nangyayari ba sa tao na madalas na may sinabi sila sa'yo, tapos nahibang lang pala sila? So, ibig sabihin, yung pagdududa, meron din siyang nakakabit na burden. Ang problema, sabi ni Williams, binigyan ng unrestricted permission to keep on asking, how do you know, yung skeptic, na hindi sila nagkaroon ng obligasyon na, bakit nagtatanong ka pa rin? Dahil naglatag naman ako ng mga dahilan sa ebidensya, matino naman yun, pero hindi mo pinapaliwanag kung bakit hindi mo pa rin tinatanggap. Dapat meron ka pa rin sanang, kung good faith skepticism to, dapat meron ka pa rin paliwanag kung bakit nagdududa ka pa rin, bakit hindi mo tinatanggap yon. Okay? So pag-uusapan pa natin ang puntong ito. Pero pagka tinanaw natin yung prior grounding requirement, pwede nating makita yun, um, pwede natin maintindihan yung prior grounding requirement, also internalism about epistemic justification, if you look at the difference between the first person and the third person perspective on justification. Ibig sabihin ng first person perspective, yung halimbawa ako yung nakakalam ng isang bagay. Halimbawa, nalalaman ko na ang nakalagay sa loob ng lalagyan na ito, ng tasang ito ay tubig. Okay, kasi nakita ko nung nilagay, ininuman ko na ng isang lagok, etc. Alam ko na tubig yon. So, ibig sabihin, pag ako yung nagtatanggol na tama yung pinaniniwalaan ko na tubig yon, internally accessible sa akin, kaya kong matukoy sa sarili kong kalooban at isipan kung ano yung mga pagpapaliwanag na yon. So, yun yung first person perspective on justification. But we can also have what is sometimes called the third person or external perspective on justification. And sometimes this is easier to explain when we're talking about very young children or animals. We can have, for example, very intelligent dogs who know where the food is hidden. Alam nila kung saan nakatago yung pagkain. Hindi natin malalaman kung ano yung nangyayari sa kalooban ng aso. Wala tayong access do sa first person perspective ng aso. Pero nakikita natin na inaamoy niya, nakikita natin na may ginagawa siya kasi naiisip niya na nandun sa ilalim ng kung ano man yun yung pagkain. But we can describe and we can have judgments about which dog is better at making judgments like this. At nakikita natin na meron siyang direct connection through its brain and through its cognitive processes about what's going on in the world, in this case, where the food is. Okay, so I will end this recording with that, and we will continue to discuss related issues in the coming days and weeks.